the argument about the U.S. setting up a counter organization to reinvest in Africa, more like to counter China's investment in Africa?
It depends. When they come with their own mechanisms, we would now take a position to see, okay, whether this percentage of trade will go to U.S., this percentage of trade. It depends on incentives. So if there are sufficient incentives that will stimulate the necessity, that will stimulate some kind of rapprochement, some kind of understanding between Nigeria and the United States, then we go. So in this instance, you have to liberalize your position. You don't have to be very rigid about what position you take, because you are talking about your national interest. So if China comes with something that is very attractive, or fortunately, you have to be very careful somehow. We have to be very careful with all those that are bringing the carrot, because we don't know whether they have the stick behind them. So we have to be very careful. So for now, our policymakers or our policymakers have assessed what China has in store, and they believe that, okay, we can go for some of these loans, we can go for some of this infrastructural provision or whatever. So when US comes with its own fresh mechanisms, we are going to look at them, and then we also take our position.
Do we have to wait for them to come before we take our position?
Because we don't know what they are even defining. We don't know what they are reinventing. We don't know, because normally we have normal trade relations with them. So if in view of our engagement now with China, they feel they must reinvent their trade relations with us, then we are going to watch out for what they have to do. But yes, I agree with you that we can be proactive. However, since we don't know the direction which they are going, we may have to wait, and then we look at it when they come.
Okay. Talking about us, let's look at the issue of widening inequalities within the societies. The president highlighted that as well, but let me see if I can get exactly his quote. We must be mindful of widening inequalities within societies and the gap between the rich and the poor nations. Is that position of the nation of Nigeria internationally? Do you see that reflected internally?
Well, if you look at his position, if you look at his policy critically, particularly towards corruption or against corruption, his attitude towards corruption and against corruption, and trying to, you can see, I think there is a kind of reflection, because when you look at the money repatriated from the Abacha loot, and government saying that it's going to distribute the money, the mechanism for distribution or whatever may be different. I may not agree. However, that is connotatively, the framework is what we are interested in here, that he wants to take all the money which he felt belongs to the people and was taken out by the former leaders. Now they are coming in, and he wants to distribute or redistribute the money among the poor. So that follows his line of thinking, or that follows his framework, that the gap between the rich and the poor had to be narrowed.
But how can that be narrowed?
Well,
in the international scene and then even locally? Beyond just collecting repatriated funds and sharing amongst the people. That's what I'm saying. That I may not subscribe to the view that sharing of money, is somehow in the sense that it's a bit simplistic. It's a bit simplistic to address social issues. But possibly if we have social mechanism, social security package, you understand, that may address fundamentally some of the problems that the poor are faced with. However, for the poor countries, I just feel that tackling corruption, and I want to support his position when he said that substantial percentage of the funds or revenue which ought to be used which ought to be dispensed for the good of the people, majority of the people. This is the money, this is the percentage that the people, this is the money that people take out. And when they take it out, then the people suffer. Why? Because number one, there will be no provision of infrastructure. Two, there will be no social package which is going to help to ameliorate their position or their condition. So when these things happen, for countries, I don't expect handouts. I don't think they should expect handouts from other nations. What they should do is to see how they are going to curb corruption within. once they call corruption, if you have 100% to spend for the people, what stops you from spending 100%? Why do you have to cut away? Why do you have to stash away 80% outside and then doing what there? And then you spend 20%, which is not even the 100% is not adequate to provide these basic amenities for the people. And now you are taking 80% away. So that's the problem. So it is the poor nations, coupled with the fact that they are also enmeshed in corrupt tendencies and corrupt practices. That is why we have underdevelopment, because a lot of money which they ought to have been used for developmental process or the developmental programs are being taken out, and that's unfair.
Real quick, is there something the UN can do to stop this, so that the nations need to spend their monies within instead of taking them out? Is there something that the UN
yes,
can do?
They are doing. They may not. The UN as
something
a body,
more.
yes, the UN as a body may not be able to act, because you see, the UN is just a framework. It's like a framework for general or collective action. But the nations or the countries members, those members of the United Nations will now have to see how they can form or design multilateral instrumentalities which will help them to appropriate, or which will help them to follow the framework which the UN has already designed, that, okay, multilateral agreements can be signed towards this end, so that whatever money that has been repatriated out, or money that has, the money that has been stolen out, then, so if you sign agreements, like Nigeria signed with Qatar and some other nations now in Dubai, so the money will have to be taken back to the country where they were stolen from, and then be used for the purpose which they were meant for.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dapo Thomas, analyzing Nigeria's international relations. Thank you for speaking with us. Sunrise Daily will be back shortly. Please don't go away.